She was 21 and homeless. No family who would take her, no deposit, nothing but a duffel bag and $10 she had left after the bus. And with that $10, she bought an abandoned cottage on a 40-acre island in Lake Superior, 3/4 of a mile off the Wisconsin shore, with no bridge, no ferry, and no power line to it. The cottage had been shut for 16 years. There was no well, no septic that anybody could find a permit for. The county had taxed it as unimproved land since 2011, and the family that owned it had stopped answering letters. But what nobody knew was that inside the boathouse on that island, stacked against the back wall where the water never reached, was something that would change her life forever. Before we continue, if stories like this mean something to you, hit subscribe and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. Kari Lindstrom grew up in Ashland, Wisconsin, which is a town of 7,000 at the bottom of Chequamegon Bay, and she had been on the water her whole life without ever owning any of it. Her mother died in 2021 when Kari was 17. Her father had been out of the picture since she was 4 and is somewhere in Minnesota. She finished high school living with an aunt in Washburn, and that arrangement ended 6 months after graduation. Not badly, but it ended. Since then, it has been rented rooms. A season in the kitchen at a supper club in Bayfield, 8 months at a fish processor on the bay. She is direct about the part people want to make into something. There was no crisis and no eviction. She simply ran out of rooms she could afford in a county where every third house is a short-term rental. The last one went in March when the owner listed it. Kari put her things in a storage unit in Ashland and slept on a friend's floor for 11 weeks and then on a different friend's floor for 4 more. She was working the whole time. That is the part she wants in. $20 an hour at the fish house, full-time, and still nowhere to live. The island came up in June because of a man at the fish house whose brother-in-law does title work in Bayfield. What he told her is that there was a cottage on Torkelson Island that the county was about to take for the taxes, and that the family had let it go and would rather it went to somebody than to the sheriff's sale. Torkelson Island is 40 acres of basalt and birch, about 3/4 of a mile off the mainland at the north end of the bay. It is privately held, it has 1 building on it, and it is not on the ferry route to anywhere. The asking price was whatever cleared the back taxes. The back taxes were $1,100, and the family paid those themselves to close it out clean. So the deed changed hands for $10 and a signature at a title office in Bayfield in June. Kari is careful that this was not a bargain anybody was getting one over on. A house you cannot drive to, cannot insure, cannot get a mortgage on, and cannot get an ambulance to is not worth what a house on a road is worth, and everybody in that transaction knew it. The deed is in the name Kari Lindstrom, and it is 4 pages, and she has a photograph of it on her phone. Chequamegon Bay is the southwestern corner of Lake Superior, and it is a different lake from the one people picture. Superior proper is 1,000 feet deep and does not freeze. The bay is shallow, 20 to 80 feet, mostly enclosed by the mainland and the Apostle Islands. It freezes hard. That is the whole of the local geography, and it has organized life on that shore for 200 years. In summer, you take a boat. In winter, for 6 or 8 or 10 weeks, you drive. The ice road to Madeline Island is the famous one, and it is still run, plowed and staked by the town of La Pointe. Cars cross it every winter that the ice takes. What people from elsewhere do not know is that the Madeline Road is only the biggest of them. Every inhabited island and every back bay on that shore has had its own crossing. Most of them were never official, never plowed, and never on a map. Somebody local walked out, found the safe line, and marked it, and everybody else followed the marks. Torkelson Island had one of those crossings from at least the 1920s until it stopped. The crossing ran from a gravel landing at the end of Bono Road on the mainland to the south landing on the island, and there are people in Washburn who can still draw the line on a napkin. What none of them can tell you is who put the stakes in. Kari has now put that question to 11 people and got 11 versions of the same shrug. The cottage is 1 story, 28 feet by 20, built of cedar on a fieldstone footing in 1931. It has a hip roof with cedar shingles replaced in 2004. They are the reason the building is dry. There is a screened porch across the lakeside and a brick chimney at the north gable. Inside, 1 main room with a chimney in it, 2 small bedrooms off the back, and a kitchen with a hand pump at a soapstone sink and a wood cook stove. There is no electricity, and there never was. There is a cistern under the porch that catches roof water and a spring on the north end of the island that runs all year. Every window is intact. Kari counted them twice because she did not believe it. 14 windows, 16 years shut, not one broken. Kari Lindstrom uses that fact when people ask why an island. Nobody comes. The nearest year-round house on the mainland shore is 1.5 miles from the landing. In 16 years, nobody rowed out to that island to take a window out of a cottage nobody was watching. Kari has thought about that more than she expected to. 16 years of nobody bothering is what left her a house with 14 windows in it. The cedar shingles from 2004 are the other reason, and somebody in that family paid for a roof on a building they had already stopped visiting. That is not luck. It is because there is 3/4 of a mile of open water between that cottage and anybody who might break one. That is the single biggest advantage of owning an island and the thing that made this possible at all. The boathouse is down at the south landing, 30 yards from the cottage, on cribbing over the water. She got the boathouse doors open in July with a crowbar and a can of penetrating oil. It is 16 feet by 30 with a slip down the middle. A wooden skiff hangs in slings over the water. It has not been in the lake since 2009, and a boat builder in Washburn says it is worth restoring. Along both side walls, there are the things a boathouse has: oars, a gill net reel, 2 anchors, coils of line, a pile of orange life jackets gone stiff, and along the whole back wall, stacked in a rack somebody built for the purpose, there are stakes, cedar, split, not sawn. About 5 feet long, sharpened at one end, and every one of them wrapped at the top with a band of red cloth tacked on with a copper nail. They are stacked in bundles of 10, tied with twine, and there are 11 bundles and 1 more of odds. Kari Lindstrom counted them sitting on the slip edge with her feet over the water. 111 cedar stakes. She had absolutely no idea what they were for. She photographed the rack and sent it to 3 people that evening. The man at the fish house came back with fence posts. His brother-in-law guessed survey stakes. The third person she sent it to was a retired ice fisherman in Washburn called Merle Sandvik, and he rang her back inside 4 minutes. An ice road is not a road, and nobody builds it. What somebody does is find it. Bay ice is not uniform. It is thinner over current, thinner where a spring comes up, thinner near a point where wind keeps water moving, and it changes from year to year with the wind and the snow cover and the freeze-up date. So each winter somebody has to go out on foot early with a chisel and a tape. Chop test holes every 50 or 100 feet. Find the line where the ice is thick enough all the way across. Then that person marks the line so everybody else can follow it in the dark and in blowing snow. The marker has to be tall enough to show above drift and visible enough to see from a truck. A 5-foot cedar stake with a red rag on it is exactly that. 111 stakes at 50 feet is 1 mile and a bit. That is what a 3/4 mile crossing needs once you allow for the dogleg round the shoal at the north end of the island. Kari worked that out on the back of a fuel receipt and then sat in the boathouse for a while. Merle Sandvik walked her through the rest of it on the telephone. The red rag is standard, and it is not decoration. A bare stake disappears against snow at 200 yards, and a rag does not. Copper nails, because a steel nail rusts, and the rag comes off in the first thaw. Cedar, because it splits straight, takes a point, and does not soak up water and freeze into a club. Every choice in those stakes is somebody's 50th year of doing it. The stakes are numbered. That is the thing she did not see until she untied a bundle. On the flat of each one, about a foot down from the rag, there is a number burned into the cedar with a hot iron, 1 through 111. Below the number on every single stake there is a second mark, and it is a year, not the same year. The stakes carry years from 1958 to 2008, and there are stakes from most of those winters in the rack. A stake that survives the season gets pulled and stacked and used again. One that goes into the lake at breakup gets replaced. So the rack is 50 years of crossings, and the oldest surviving stake in it is numbered 46 and dated 1958. Kari photographed every stake over 2 evenings and laid the years out on a spreadsheet on her phone. 1958 to 2008. 51 consecutive winters with at least one stake in the rack, and then nothing after 2008. The woman who cut them is not a mystery either, because the island is named after her family and because everybody over 60 in that county knows the name. Inga Torkelson was born on that island in 1929 and died in Ashland in 2009 at 80. Her father ran a small commercial fishing operation off it, and her grandfather built the cottage in 1931. She was the last of them to live there. She lived there year-round, alone, from 1958, when her mother died, until 2007, when she could no longer manage the winters. She never married. She worked as a school secretary in Washburn for 31 years and commuted. That is a sentence that requires the ice road to make any sense at all. That is the practical fact underneath all of this. From November to April, Inga Torkelson's route to work was the crossing, and she had to know where the ice was safe because she was the one using it. What she also did, and what nobody has been able to find any record of her ever mentioning, is stake it for everybody else. Orrin Berglund is 74 and lives in Washburn, and he drove that crossing perhaps 400 times. Kari found him by putting it to the hardware store, who used to go out to the islands in winter, which is how you find anything in that county. He came over in a friend's boat in August and walked up to the boathouse and stood in the doorway looking at the rack for a while. "That's them," he said. "You knew about these? I followed them." Orrin Berglund went over and put his hand on one of the bundles. "Every winter from when I was a kid until it quit freezing. Deer hunting, ice fishing, hauling wood off this island for my uncle. Who did you think put them out?" He looked at her. "The county," he said. Everybody thought the county. Nobody in that township, as far as Kari has been able to establish, knew that a woman was doing it by hand. She has now put it to 11 people who used that crossing. Every one of them assumed it was official. 2 of them named specific county departments. It was not the county. The county has never staked anything but the Madeline Island Road, and there is no line in any Bayfield County budget for the North Bay crossing, ever, because Kari put it to the clerk, and the clerk checked. What was actually happening is that a woman in her 50s and 60s and 70s went out on that ice alone in December. A chisel, a tape, and a sled of cedar stakes. She found the line, and then everybody in that township drove on it. Orrin Berglund keeps coming back to one thing, and he has put it in almost the same words 3 times now. He crossed on that ice with his children in the truck. The thing about the numbers took her until September, and it took a retired ice fisherman to explain it. Every stake is numbered 1 to 111, and the numbers are not decoration, they are positions. Stake 1 goes in at the mainland end, stake 111 at the island landing, and every one has its own place on the line. Which means the line was the same line every year near enough, and she had it memorized as a sequence. But the ice is not the same every year, and this is where it gets specific. Where the ice was good, the stakes went in on the numbers. Where a soft spot showed up, she did not move the whole line. She put in a stake at its own number and then dog-legged around the bad ice with the odd bundle. That is the 12th bundle in that rack, and those 11 stakes have no numbers on them at all. The unnumbered ones are the detours, 51 winters of them, all in one bundle, and there is no way to know which year any of them belong to. Merle Sandvik rates the unnumbered bundle as is the most interesting thing in the Boathouse, and nobody will ever get anything more out of it. 11 detours in 51 winters, 11 times the line she knew was wrong, and she found another one. Merle Sandvik is 78 and fished that bay commercially until 1996, and he is the only person Kari has found who ever spoke to Inga Torkelson about ice. Once, in about 1981, at the landing. He put it to her whether the north side was holding. Thin off the point, she told him. Go wide. He went wide. He did not ask how she knew, and it did not occur to him to. The building is in better condition than anything else in this, and the problem is everything around it. The cottage needs a roof in about 8 years and nothing else structural. That is a genuinely rare sentence in this kind of story, and Kari gets it in before anybody raises it. What she does not have is a way to live there legally or safely. There is no septic. Bayfield County will not permit a new system on that island without a soil evaluation, and the soil evaluation costs $3,000 and may come back saying no. There is no power, and the nearest line is on the mainland shore, so it is solar or nothing. And a system that would run a well pump is $9,000. There is no well. The spring and the cistern are what there is, and the health department's opinion about drinking cistern water is one Kari shares, and there is the water itself. 3/4 of a mile of Lake Superior is nothing in July, and it is impassable for about 6 weeks a year now, in the shoulder seasons, when there is too much ice to run a boat and not enough to walk on. That window is the thing that decides whether anybody can ever live on that island again, and it is getting longer at both ends. 50 years ago, the ice came in December and went in April, and the 6 weeks did not exist. There was open water or there was a road. Now there are 2 long stretches a year when the island is genuinely unreachable, and no septic permit and no solar array changes that. Kari has worked out that whatever this becomes, it is a place she goes to and not a place she lives. And she arrived at that in about August and has been studying about it since. If you're enjoying this story, take a second and subscribe. It helps us keep making stories like this one. And tell us in the comments, is there something in your town you always assumed somebody official was doing? The Historical Society in Bayfield came out in September, and the visit changed what this is. They brought a woman called Junie Aslaksen, who is 81 and who was at school with Inga Torkelson, and they brought a box. The box is the Society's Torkelson file, and it is thin. A photograph of the fish operation in 1946, 2 newspaper cuttings about her father, her school employment record, an obituary of 11 lines. There is nothing in it about the ice at all. Junie Aslaksen looked at the rack for a long time and then came out with a sentence Kari has repeated to about 9 people since. Inga never told anybody, because if you tell people you have marked the ice, then people who should not be on the ice go out on it. That is not sentiment. It is a specific and serious piece of reasoning, and everybody on that shore understands it. A stake line says somebody has checked this. If the person who checked it is a county crew with a drill rig and a schedule, that is a promise. If it is one woman in her 60s with a chisel who checked on Tuesday, it is not a promise. It is her best guess about Tuesday. Inga Torkelson put the stakes out and let people think it was official, because official is what makes people careful about the edges and stay on the line. And she never claimed it, because claiming it would have made it hers, and then somebody going through would have been her fault. Orrin Berglund disagrees with half of that, and he has been open about it. Orrin Berglund's position is that she should have told somebody, and that 51 years of a township driving on one woman's judgment is not a system, it is luck, and that it held because she was very good and not because it was safe. He is not angry about it. Twice now he has come round to the same place. He would not have crossed differently, and he is not sure he would have wanted to know. But he thinks somebody in that township should have asked once in 51 years who was putting the stakes out. Kari has been careful not to take a side on that, and people have pushed her to. Her view is that both of them are describing the same woman, and that neither reading makes her smaller. The stakes themselves are being cataloged now, and it is slow because there are 111 of them. The society is photographing each one, recording the burn number and year, and building a table. Kari is doing the photography because she is the one with the boat. What the table already shows is a pattern nobody expected. The years are not evenly spread. There are 31 stakes dated between 1958 and 1979, and only 9 between 1996 and 2008. That is not because she stopped. It is because the later stakes survived and the early ones did not, and a stake survives when it gets pulled at the end of the season rather than left to go through at breakup. So the rack is a record of how the ice was ending. In the 60s, she was losing stakes every spring because the ice broke up violently while the stakes were still in it. By the 2000s, she was pulling them because the season was ending gradually and there was time. Junie Aslaksen put it more simply than any of that. The ice used to go out with a bang. Now it just goes. Merle Sandvik agrees with her and puts a number on it. The last winter he would have driven a truck across that bay without thinking about it was 2003. So she is not living there and has not pretended she is. She rents a room in Ashland for $420 a month and works the fish house. On days off from May to November, she goes out to the island in a 14-foot aluminum boat with a 15-horse outboard. Orrin Berglund sold it to her for $600 and would not take more. What she does out there is unglamorous. She has cleaned the cottage room by room. She has cut about a third of the birch that has come up too close to the building. She has rehung the boathouse doors. The skiff in the slings is still in the slings. The boat builder in Washburn has looked at it twice and says it is a Mackinac-type hull, locally built, probably 1940s. And that it is a $2,000 restoration that would be worth doing and is not a priority. Kari agrees it is not a priority. She has $3,100 saved as of November, and the soil evaluation is the first thing. If it comes back no, and it might, then the cottage stays what it is now, which is a building she can be in during daylight from May to November. She maintains she would still have bought it. She also does not know whether that is true or something she tells herself, which is a more honest answer than most people give. She has been out to that island 41 times since June. The boat is the thing that makes it possible, and it is a 25-minute run from the public landing at Bono Road in flat water. In anything over about 2 feet, she does not go, and Lake Superior gets to 2 feet quickly. She has turned back 3 times. October is the last reliable month. After that, the wind comes round to the northwest, and the bay gets up in an hour. She has a rule now, made after the 3rd turn back. She looks at the forecast at 6 in the morning and does not argue with it. And here is the last thing, and Kari found it in October, moving the rack to sweep behind it. Behind the 11 bundles and the odd bundle, flat against the back wall of the boathouse where nothing had been moved in 16 years, there is a 12th stack. It is 111 cedar stakes, split, sharpened, banded at the top with red cloth, tacked with copper nails. They are new. The cedar is pale. The cloth has not weathered. The nail heads are bright, and they are not numbered. A stake gets its number burned in when it goes into service, which is the season it is first used, and the number is its position on the line. These have never been in service. There is a burning iron on a shelf above the rack with a wooden handle and a scorched tip. Inga Torkelson left that island in 2007 and died in 2009. The last dated stake in the used rack is 2008. So at some point in her last 2 winters, an old woman who was no longer living on that island did the work. Split, sharpened, banded, and stacked a complete set of 111 stakes for a crossing. They have never been out on the ice. The bay has not frozen hard enough to cross since 2014. Orrin Berglund came back out in October to see them and did not say anything for a while. What he eventually got to is that a set of stakes takes a long time. You split cedar out of a log with a froe. You point each one with a draw knife. You cut and tack 111 bands. For a woman in her late 70s who had already left the island, that is not an afternoon. That is weeks of work done in a shed for a winter she had no reason to think she would be there for. Junie Aslakson's reading is simpler, and it is the one Kari finds she agrees with. Inga cut stakes every year of her life, and that in the last 2 years she cut them the way anybody does a thing they have always done, which is without deciding to. Kari has not moved that stack. It is where it was against the back wall, and she sweeps around it. Orrin Berglund put it to her in November, was she ever going to use them? No. Good, he said. Neither of them explained it further, and neither needed to. The ice has not been drivable since 2014, and the stakes have never been in it, and both of those facts are permanent now. Merle Sandvik does not think the bay will take a truck again in his lifetime. Orrin Berglund is less certain and says the lake has surprised people before. Kari keeps the new stakes dry and off the floor and does not have a view. She is 21 and the question is not hers yet. What she has said about it is that 111 sharpened stakes in a dry boathouse will keep for another 50 years, and that keeping them dry is a thing she can do. She has one line about it that she does not elaborate on. 111 is not a number you get to by accident, and that somebody counting out a full crossing in a shed in 2008 believed there was going to be one. There has been one offer, and Kari turned it down in an afternoon. A dealer in Duluth who handles Great Lakes maritime material heard about it through the Historical Society. He offered $4,000 for the used rack, the 111 numbered stakes as a set. $4,000 is the soil evaluation and most of a year of what she can save. Her answer was that the stakes are not worth $4,000 to anybody in Duluth. They are 5-foot pieces of split cedar with numbers burned in them. What they are worth is what they are. In the boathouse she found them in, on the island the woman lived on, 3/4 of a mile from the shore they went out to every winter, for 51 years. The Historical Society has proposed something else, and it is what is happening. 10 of the numbered stakes, chosen across the 51 years, go on long-term loan to Bayfield with the table and Junie Aslakson's account and Orrin Berglund's. The other 101 stay in the boathouse. So does the unnumbered set. The society has not argued with that. The woman who runs it put it to Kari this way: a stake in a case in Bayfield is a piece of wood with a number on it. And a stake in that boathouse is the story. The 10 going to Bayfield are chosen to span the 51 years. 2 from the 50s and 60s, 3 from the 70s, 2 from the 80s, 2 from the 90s, and 1 from 2008. The 2008 one is the last stake Inga Torkelson ever put in the ice and pulled out again. It is numbered 63, which puts it a little over halfway across, and there is nothing else remarkable about it. Carrie photographed it 4 times before she was satisfied she had it, and that photograph is the one going on the panel. On a Saturday at the beginning of November, with the bay flat and the birch already bare, Kari Lindstrom ran the 14-foot boat out to the island for the 40th something time and did the ordinary things. She pulled the boat up, she opened the cottage and let the air through it. She swept. She checked the roof line on the north side where the cedar is thinnest. Then she went down to the boathouse and stood in it for a while, which she does, and which she has stopped apologizing for. Here is the part that is not about an island cottage. Every winter for 51 years, a woman who lived alone on a rock in Lake Superior went out onto the ice by herself in December with a chisel and a tape and found the safe line across and staked it so that other people could drive on it. She did not tell anybody. She let a whole township believe it was the county. 400 crossings by one man alone with his children in the truck on a line she had checked on a Tuesday. She was not being modest. She had worked out that if people knew it was one woman, they would trust it less and be more careful, or trust it more and be less careful. Either way, somebody would be on that ice who should not be, so she took the credit off it deliberately for 51 years, and it cost her every bit of thanks she was ever going to get. There is somebody where you live doing that right now. The thing you assumed the council did, or the school did, or somebody official did, somebody is doing it on their own time and letting you think it is the system. So find out who. Ask at the hardware store, ask the oldest person on the street, ask who has always done it. And then say thank you while there is somebody to say it to, because Inga Torkelson died in 2009 and it took 16 years. A stack of cedar and a homeless 21-year-old for anybody to find out what she had been doing. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell us in the comments who in your life did something for years that nobody ever knew about. We'd love to hear your story. See you in the next one.